Good afternoon. My name is Hackett Landefeld. This is my colleague Kate Williams. We are employees at RWE. This is my fourth time attending the Yale Clean Energy Conference. And so I'm very excited about it. My first time was in 2022. Before I was admitted to the Yale School of Management, I attended virtually on Zoom. I attended twice as a student, and now I get to come back as a utility scale renewables developer at RWE. So I'm really excited about that. And I want to extend a special thanks in particular to Stu DeSue and to Julia Nojheim for all of your hard work in making this conference what it is today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll just follow that by saying I'm Kate Williams again. I'm also a developer with RWE. I was here last year at this very conference as an undergraduate student, had no plans on going into the energy industry, and then met Scott and the RWE team and was quickly convinced that the energy industry is where I should be and where many, many others should also be focusing their time in energy. So I'm excited to be back, and really my experience yesterday and today has just been super reaffirming of the passion and ambition and interest in this space and all of the hard work that people are putting into it, which is just incredibly exciting. So I'm even more excited to be a part of this industry than I was last year. So I'm going to hand it off to Professor Klee, who will introduce the final event of this conference.
So thank you. And a round of applause for RWE and the folks, our lead sponsor, and they've really, they helped make this event happen, and it's much appreciated. And then that deep connection to this conference is pretty awesome to have folks that are coming back year after year after year. So welcome everyone. We are in our last event, our closing keynote event for our Clean Energy Conference of 2024. And we're ending with, I think, a real treat, and I know it's a treat for me personally, to be up here with three amazing clean energy leaders who are hard at work implementing the Inflation Reduction Act's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So I'll start by giving short bios. I will actually try to get a few acronyms out of the way up front because we'll have plenty to manage through our keynote panel. And then I want to make sure that we'll have plenty of questions up here, but then plenty of questions from you in the audience. So this is your time. For those of you who know me from financing deploying clean energy and our hourly get-togethers, this is where you're thinking of your questions, and you're not putting them in the chat this time, but you're actually going to raise hands and we'll get to call on you. So let's get started. So I'll start down on that end with Vero Bourg-Meyer, who is the Senior Project Director at the Clean Energy States Alliance, where she leads the Scaling Up Solar Project, the Offshore Wind Accelerator Project, and CISA's work to assist their member states in their responses to the Inflation Reduction Act's $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and all those opportunities. So I got to know you as like a project finance attorney with this cool experience in like Africa and Asia. And then you're here and got your master's in environmental management from the School of the Environment. So everyone welcome Vero Bourg-Meyer. Next up is Rishika Ghosh, who is the Senior Manager of Partnerships and Clean Energy Products at the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp. This is the green bank affiliated with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, where you're managing their greenhouse gas reduction initiatives, that's our theme today, and your coalition partnerships for really how you deploy those funds with a real sort of view to that Philly and surrounding sort of region of Pennsylvania, a critical part of our area here on the East Coast. So chemical engineer and by training with master's and a BS from Cornell. Then you went a little further south to go down to get your MBA at Wharton. So engineer that's now pivoted into this world of energy entrepreneurship and innovation and finance. So you have all the skills for this moment, which is awesome. So everyone welcome Rishika. So last but certainly not least is Nenha Young, who's our Senior Director of Development and Network at the Coalition for Green Capital, and a former student of mine, which is the only one on this panel I get to say is a former student of mine, which is awesome. At Coalition for Green Capital, you're supporting all their efforts to raise and deploy climate finance programs and products and services with a particular focus on low-income and disadvantaged communities across the U.S., including through, you can all say with me, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Oh, that would be fun to do, like call and response in our life. No, not fun? No.
We could try.
So Nenha got her Bachelor of Science in Urban and Regional Studies from also Cornell. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Love that.
Okay. Although everyone's wearing purple, not red.
Okay.
And we're in blue.
Red is not my
here
color.
at Yale, so. Okay, sorry.
There's blue.
I'll try again with the purple joke later. But keep an eye out for that one. And a Master's of Environmental Management from our Yale School of the Environment. And this is where that intersection of urban studies, architecture, plus this finance and climate finance. So everyone welcome Nenha. So I've already said as many times, like 5-6 times the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, it's $27 billion that's split into 3 core sort of areas, $14 billion in the National Clean Investment Fund, the NCIF, which is about creating national clean energy financing institutions. There's $6 billion for the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, the CCIA. That's hubs to provide funding and technical assistance to community lenders. And then there's $7 billion in the Solar for All program. That's going to expand the number of low-income and disadvantaged communities that can really distribute solar and put distributed solar everywhere they possibly can. So let's go from right to left. Vero, if you could start by...
This is not a reflection of political affiliation.
I could make the purple joke now, but no,
Yes,
I'll say
do it.
Well, you are at the Clean Energy States Alliance.
Yes.
You work across political lines with
absolutely.
states. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what Clean Energy States Alliance is doing and what parts of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund you're focused on.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being here on a Friday before a long weekend. We appreciate it. CESA, the Clean Energy States Alliance, we a bipartisan, nonprofit coalition of state energy agencies working across the country to develop programs and policies that advance a just clean energy transition. And you can tell I've said that a couple times in the past couple years. What it means in practice is that as an organization, we are a group made of state energy agencies and green banks. And what we do is we provide support to them. If you look at our website, we have a ton of different things in there. The way I like to explain it is that we do kind of 3 fundamental things. We convene states, we inform states, and we assist states. And by assist, I mean technical assistance on just about anything that they need help with. In the context of GGRF, we allowed acronyms now?
Yes, you can now,
okay.
yes. I've said it enough times we can use the acronym
Okay,
GGRF.
good. I've tried going with GRF, but no one wants it, so we'll keep with GGRF. So in the context of GGRF, what we do is we serve as kind of the convener of the Solar for All awardees. So we've had over time, we've been doing LMI Solar for about 10 years as an organization, a little over that. Sorry, LMI being low and moderate income. So LMI Solar for over a decade. We had an existing scaling up solar project that was a DOE-funded project in which we were bringing states together to discuss different ways to support LMI Solar on the community solar side with manufactured homes, on kind of the TPO. Third-party ownership, and we're going to try with the acronyms not to go overboard. Third-party ownership solutions that would help leverage tax credits that are not available to low-income households, and then also figure out what could be done with community institutions. So we had kind of that network already established, and then GGRF implementation framework was published, and we're like, this is exactly what we're working on. How about we take all of these same states and see if they want to work together to create applications and figure out what it is exactly that EPA wants to be doing. So we had not just our members engaged in that work, but also states that are outside of our membership because it was a DOE-funded project. So with federal funding, what we do is that we support every state in the nation that wants to work with us. So with that in mind, we supported about 4.3 of the 7 billions at the time of the applications. And since then, the network has kind of grown organically, and now we have a network of about 6 point something billion out of the 7. We provide things like office hours. We meet weekly, twice a week, with awardees. They don't all come every single time. Sometimes it's 12 people, sometimes it's 50. And we offer templates, we offer guidance, we try to translate what EPA is asking. And we do a lot. Right now, the focus is really on understanding the compliance aspects of this program. And then at some point, hopefully, we will go back into kind of the more programmatic aspects of LMI Solar, which is really where kind of my heart is.
So, Vera, I want to put a pin on that compliance piece with EPA. We'll come back to that in a moment. That spoiler alert, it's not easy to comply with the federal government's rules.
I don't know what you mean. It's such a breeze.
Okay, but before we get there, Rishika, tell us about the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp, what it does, who it is, what they do, and your part of the GGRF that you're most focused on.
Amazing. Well, as Vero said, welcome. Glad that y'all are here. I've been working at the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp for about 3 years now, which is also approximately the amount of time that it's been around. We launched in September of 2021, and we were a spin-out of an existing municipal government entity called the Philadelphia Energy Authority. They've been doing amazing work in Philadelphia County, which is also the city of Philadelphia, for context. For about a decade, they've had this amazing Philadelphia energy campaign that they started in 2016 with the goal of deploying about $10 billion of capital into the region and creating 10,000 jobs. Doing amazing work with some of their existing residential work around supporting solar and green and healthy homes initiatives, thinking of new programmatic work that they can do, which was awesome. But one of the missing gaps in the market was just around financing. And that's something that as a municipal government entity, they couldn't really take on because legal. But then also there wasn't really anyone else around in the city that could actually provide, financing and fill in that gap for supporting pilot programs, working with a lot of stakeholders across the energy spectrum, and really focusing in on building out a clean energy economy. So that's where PGCC came from. We've been, like I said, around for about 3 years, and since our launch, have really been focused in on supporting PEA's existing work, another acronym, sorry, so PEA, Philadelphia Energy Authority. And then, so that means like supporting their low-income solar programs, which we've been really lucky to have around for about 8 years now, and have, I think, helped built out, I'm going to blank on the number, but like a lot of households and helping them get access to solar. And then also working with, city stakeholders and regional stakeholders on thinking through municipal energy plans, thinking about working with the school district, and really serving as a bit more of an interim consultant with them as they're figuring out what being energy compliant and meeting the city's 2030 zero carbon goals are. So a lot of work that's already being done. As a green bank, which I don't know if I defined before or how much you all already know about it, but green banks are not traditional banks. We don't do the whole checking account, savings account aspect. Our goal is really to invest in different projects, both at the residential and consumer level and at the commercial level. So as an independent nonprofit, a lot of our funding currently comes through working with federal resources and really building out existing programmatic work, doing pilots, and working really broadly with partners. As we think about the GGRF, what does that mean for PGCC? It means a lot, honestly, because this is one of the major capitalization opportunities for a smaller, nascent green bank like us, and it's a really amazing opportunity for us to better understand the pipeline of all the projects that exist in our region, but then also being able to support them. When it comes to GGRF, we are actually a sub-recipient of the Solar for All grant, and we're working with the state of Pennsylvania to deploy $70 million and support 14,000 homes in Southeast Pennsylvania. And we're also working on with the other two GGRF pots of money, I guess. So the CCIA, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, and then the NCIF, which is the National Clean Investment Fund. We're hoping to draw down funds from there to support projects in our region, helping other lenders, including CDFIs and other community banks, learn about how to invest in clean energy and setting them up for success, as well as focusing quite a bit on market building to make sure that projects are actually able to take on this funding, that people understand compliance, but also what it means to draw down federal funds and use them on projects that are appropriate for them to be used on.
Okay, there's a lot in there that we're going to
Yep.
unpack. But before we do, Nenha, I want you to share with us who, again, the Coalition for Green Capital is, and then your parts of the GGRF that either you personally or the coalition broadly are focused on.
Well, first I want to start with thanking you and the whole team at CBAY for the invitation to speak. It's wild to come full circle, like only 2 years since I graduated from the School of the Environment. Somehow I could see this world of clean energy finance as an economic development opportunity. I spent about a decade working in community and economic development, starting off in affordable housing, did traditional urban planning, and then the storms kept hitting every city that I lived in, and it was always the low-income communities that would be the last to be responded to, or even would just lose access to energy. So I don't know, I could see the pattern, I could see it coming, and then as I graduated, the Inflation Reduction Act was actually a vestige of the Build Back Better, if anyone remembers that. And so there was a scramble amongst the coalition and many other organizations to figure out how to support this historic opportunity. And it's such an honor to be sitting here talking about now implementation. So Coalition for Green Capital is a nonprofit entity. Our founder, Reed Hunt, is also deeply connected to Yale. He's a Yale College graduate as well as Yale Law School and formerly FCC administrator, and could see as well 10 years ago the need for the country to invest in clean energy. And so spent 10 years trying to set up a national green bank. Most folks did not know this work was being done, but it was really the opportunity to be a steward of public funds to ensure that the country could keep up with the rest of the world as they were transitioning to clean energy. So some countries have actually had green banks for about a decade. So as Vero and I love to talk about, it's not anything new. We are catching up. And in the initial Green Bank Act of 2009, we were actually asking for $100 billion to capitalize the Green Bank. It got reduced over time to $27 billion. And the Coalition for Green Capital was awarded $5 billion from the Environmental Protection Agency to capitalize the Green Bank. We are moving quickly. We are building the jet plane as it's flying. We are laying the railroad tracks as the train has already left the station. I literally was sending out a deadline to EPA about 10 minutes before I got on this panel. It's an exciting time. It's so apropos to have this panel right now because I'm hopeful that in 5 years from now, we can do another one of these panels and see what progress we made. I have said a lot, and I don't think I did a great example. So Coalition for Green Capital has helped establish green banks across the country, most notably the Connecticut Green Bank. I feel like there's some folks from Connecticut Green Bank here in the audience, New York Green Bank, and others across the country. And our dual objective as we set up a national green bank is to establish at least one green bank in every single state. So that's where my hat of network exists. We also were awarded 2 awards for the Solar for All program, in which we will be supporting work in North and South Dakota, which are interesting parts of the country. We stepped in because no one applied, and so we're seeing ourselves as gap fillers in that process. But I look forward to sharing more about GGRF and what we're looking forward to in the future.
So thank you, and Nenha, I want to build on something, though, that you said and maybe move that along the line. You seem to say this, is the GGRF new? Is it new or different or radical or a different approach to this type of deployment? Nenha, do you want to give your yes, no to that?
So it's new in the sense of we have never seen this level of investment from the federal level in renewable energy with a focus on low and moderate income communities, or low income and disadvantaged, which is the terminology that they use at the federal level, framed within the realm of the Justice 40, which is an initiative of the Biden administration to ensure that any federal resources, at a minimum 40% of those funds, go to low income and disadvantaged communities. So that is new. But public-private partnerships when it comes to investing in clean energy is not new. And again, the notion of a national state-backed green bank is not new.
And maybe I'll ask down the line, because you both mentioned existing Solar for All programs. Do you want to maybe talk to that as something that puts you in a better position under the GGRF?
Sure, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the work that we've already been doing in the low-income solar implementation work. So low-income solar work is not new in Philadelphia. The Solarize Philly program has been around since 2016 and it has already helped support so much solar at low-income homes because of the structure that we've already implemented. What's new about this work is that we're able to take an existing model that's succeeded in Philadelphia and expand it out into the suburban counties, work with more implementation partners, especially on new installers, really focusing in a little bit more on workforce development and making sure that more diverse contractors and installers are able to participate in this process and really benefit from all this great federal funding opportunities to help them grow.
So, and Vero, from CISA's perspective, you've been, and you and your organization, been at this for a while. What is new about the GGRF and or what is just a continuation of things that have been happening in the past?
I mean, agreed with everything that was said here.
Yeah, you're the last on the line, so it's always harder to...
Yeah. So the scale is new. The LMI kind of real focus on LMI communities, disadvantaged communities, that's new. And I think when we're looking at the buckets, so Solar for All is 100% dedicated to LMI. The other buckets have also high thresholds. NCIF has a kind of a minimum threshold of 40%. They're planning to achieve 60 to 70%, which is a very high proportion, right? So that's definitely new. But when you're thinking about the diversity of the programs that are going to come out of this thing, if you're looking at the range, like we're going to have some grant programs. Grants aren't new. We're going to have some fully subsidized programs for kind of the very L of LMI. That's not new. Then the reason I'm saying that's not new is because I think there is a bit of a disservice that's being done when we talk about this thing as if it's this whole new, completely unknown. It's not completely unknown. Tennessee Valley Authority in 1997 already had on-bill finance, guaranteed in the back end, lending to consumers, right? It's really not all that inventive, but it is innovative, right? I think that's the key. We're in the realm of innovation. We're not in the realm of invention. And when you're looking at some of the programs that exist out there, the revolving loan funds that have been going around for a long time, I think there's few things that financiers like less than the word bespoke, right? They want things that they understand. They want things that they can get used to quickly. They want things that are simple and that are replicable and that you can achieve scale with, right? And that's exactly the point of this program. It's not to develop programs, it's to develop markets. Yeah. And that's where the kind of super new exciting stuff is, sitting, I think. Mm-hmm.
So, Nenha, I'm going to borrow something else you said in your intro, because you said a lot in your intro, by the way. And pivoted a little. You wanted us back here in 5 years to have this panel again, which, Julia, are you taking notes that we are going to schedule that one for 5 years from now? But I want to pivot it a little and maybe borrow from Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson's book, which was titled, What If We Get It Right? What is your vision? Maybe we'll start down at Vero's end this time. Your vision of the future, and maybe it's 5 years, maybe, and tell us your sort of timeline to that future of what if we actually get all this stuff we're trying to, like, as we're building the plane and running the tracks and doing all the things that Nenha said we have to do, what if we actually succeed? What does it look like?
I think if you actually succeed, first of all of this has become utterly boring, right? We are all like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I'm not interested in that. I'm going to go check out what this next new thing is, right? It's become boring. It's so mainstream that it's become boring. That's one. Two, there is something I think really interesting about the Solar for All program, and that's different from what's been done up to now in LMI Solar, is that it has a savings requirement of 20%. That's very loosely defined, and it needs a little bit more guidance from EPA on that, on what exactly that means. But that 20% right now, based on the applications, based on the scale of the programs as we know them right now, so before implementation is actually ongoing, we're looking at about $8 billion in 25 years. That's without taking into account any of the revolving that's going to happen with those funds, right? And so when I say we want to be launching markets and not programs, if we are successful, that $8 billion has actually turned in multipliers of that, right? It's got to be a lot more than that because you're going to make little baby green banks everywhere and you're going to create little baby programs everywhere that are going to be very adapted to the situations and the states in which they're located, right? So something in Tennessee is not going to work for something for someone in California or for someone in Minnesota, right? They all have different structures. We have 50 different regulatory frameworks, and I'm actually being kind there because there are states that have 150 utilities, right? And they also have to deploy these programs and make them work. So there's going to be a lot of kind of growing pains, but I think if we're successful, we get to a point where all of these frameworks are kind of a little bit harmonized, even though there's underneath it a lot of diversity.
Hey, Rishika, same question, and I'm not going to say that you're a baby green bank.
We are a nascent green bank, thank you. I'm going to actually expand on something that Vero said and take it one step further. So I think one of the great goals that's a really good interim goal for us, or maybe green banks in general, is to say, yes, we should have green banks everywhere. These green banks should be able to provide financial solutions that are able to fit the needs of the market. But I'm going to take it one step further and say, I don't think there should be green banks after a certain period of time.
Absolutely.
And this is maybe a minor hot take, but I'd love to expand on why I think this. Right now, the role of green banks is really to be
We all adjusted in our shouldn't be green banks anymore. Sorry.
No, because it's like the role of green banks right now, at least in the Philadelphia market and in a lot of markets right now, is to be a gap filler, to serve the purpose of taking on, like, supporting projects that cannot get financing through other mechanisms or are either new and creative and just different that maybe traditional financiers or other organizations haven't had a chance to develop or just maybe aren't willing to take on that type of risk. The thing with green financing and what I hope to see, maybe 10 years feels aggressive, but maybe in like 20 years, is yes, it will be boring, but it'll be one of those things that any financing entity that exists is willing to support and take on, and will either have like a path to developing and making very streamlined access to good, accessible capital, and still having that focus on equity that I know green banks and other community lenders and community development financing institutions, or CDFIs, another acronym I will use, do already. And so if we can streamline that process and make sure that we keep equity in mind going forward, I would say that we have done it well beyond correctly and are thriving in the future.
And Jeff Shub, who was on our lunchtime, would actually be involved. I was a little like upset that his traditional Wells Fargo like world.
That's okay. He has CGC roots.
I know he does.
He's
I know he does. I know he was there.
does.
So
He knows.
I want to step out maybe about 30 to 40,000 feet about the future. It might not be, I said 5 years, but thinking 10 or 20. The way that the Biden administration created this program is really an all of society approach. And so while we are investing in clean energy, we're also investing in workforce development. So we're trying to identify domestic manufacturers for every piece of technology. Whether or not we can do it at this moment is another part of the equation, but the intention is domestic manufacturing, employing low-income and disadvantaged communities to be the installers. We have to have attorneys and lawyers, and we are figuring out infrastructure improvements. I feel like I'm missing an element, but it's really kind of everything else that goes around the actual technology investment. And I feel like everyone in this room has a role to play, irrespective of where your approach is that this becomes so mainstream that it actually touches all of us and we don't even know it. I think that's the magic, is like, how did we all contribute to creating a just clean energy transition? And this is like an explicit action through finance, which we've never had before. Usually it's, let's just put together a piece of legislation and have a policy, but now we actually have money behind it. And so I'm looking forward to it, and maybe that's my urban planner hat, is to see how both social and built environments are impacted by these federal investments.
So I love those visions, and I hate to be the one that's going to bring us down a little bit. What keeps you up at night? What is standing in the way of that, Nina, for you, that fully integrated world where this is just a sort of the default, but beyond that, it's just like everyone is just simply doing it because it's the only thing that everyone would want to do. What's stopping us from that and keeping you up at night? And then everyone else has to tell me their nightmares as well down this.
So a little bit of context. When I was a student, I would frequently go into Rob's office and be in full panic mode of like, how do I do this work? There's so much to do and so little time on just like an independent study he was monitoring for me on top of coursework. Is time. Time is the thing that keeps me up at night, and it's time. The weather is changing rapidly. We're seeing this every single day. We're seeing communities being completely ravaged, and it seems like every single week now there's a new storm, and hurricane season is more intense and later. We are time-bound by the money and the administration that we currently have. Infrastructure and clean energy is truly bipartisan, but for some reason that message isn't being shared. So the element of time and getting this money deployed. And I'll just leave it there. Those are the things that I think about a lot.
No, and time, and I cherish those times. We got to spend, this is what I love about teaching here, and the passion that came through in those meetings. And then I also think about time and the time wasted. And the time I just had my 25th reunion from YCEC, and thinking about those 25 years as we didn't have a GGRF, an Inflation Reduction Act, a federal government willing to participate. So Nina's afraid of the running of time. Rishika, your fear?
I was going to say
It's a safe space.
This is a safe space. We're here for it. I think there's two components that kind of make me a little bit concerned. One, wearing my immediate Green Bank implementation hat is, it's great that this money is here. Love that this money is here. But is the market ready to actually take it on and do something about it? Market in this case includes like actual projects and individuals and consumers, but then also the actual lenders and like contractor network and like people who actually need to do the work in order to make this actually be deployed and happen. I don't want to talk about clawbacks because that's not something I really want to think about right now, but putting that word out there. But more importantly, I think the thing is like we just have to really focus in on market building to make sure that as institutions are, drawing down this fund and being like, we're ready to take on new programmatic work and deploy this through all these financing mechanisms, support programs, support workforce development. Will it actually happen? I don't know. And that kind of stresses me out a little bit in a little bit too much of a realistic manner. And then the second piece that's associated with this and something that Vero and I have been talking about all day is compliance. Compliance is tricky. There's a lot of rules with federal funding that come down the pike, and it is complicated. And especially since a large portion of this work is really geared towards supporting, low-income communities, nonprofits, small businesses, there is a burden of compliance that may end up trickling down to the end users, and that is not something that I would want to put that burden on them. So thinking about how to balance that with using this money appropriately and then moving fast is going to be a big challenge.
But Rishika, I want to just double click briefly on the first part, and maybe Vero can jump on the compliance second part, because I used to be in the government and force people to do compliance, so I don't want to talk about that. Do you find you have to take on the role of the advisor beyond the things that you thought you would be advising on? So that sort of, a therapist,
I'm a project
coach.
Therapist. It's great. I so love working with stakeholders and projects and individuals who are just trying to navigate how to even get started. But everyone is so excited about this funding, and they're thinking like 15 steps ahead, and I'm like let's take like 4 steps back. Let's talk about step 0. Like, have you thought about, just the basic levels of how you want to get this done? How far are you in your process? Have you thought about tax credits? Have you thought about how this interacts with other funding, timeline, things like that? And it's like, the excitement is amazing and I love to see it. But yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to individual projects one-on-one.
And it's, when you say project, is that also developer, but it's also the host, but it's also the community around it? I mean, like, the layers of people in that process seems daunting.
Sometimes, but as I mentioned earlier, my title is partnerships. So
right.
my job is to talk to people. I'm so okay with that.
So Vero, I don't know if I want to throw over to you the sort of compliance piece. You also, I've heard those office hours are like therapy sessions for like, and I, as someone who hosts office hours, which not always are well attended, that people should come to more often, just saying.
You should talk to Rob, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, so what is your nightmare? Is it any of these, or is it a new one, or is it a combination of them?
It's a combination. I think this was a perfect combination, actually, of what keeps me up at night. Because we have a very short time to deploy massive amount of funding with incredible limitations put on by the federal government, as they should. It's not like they can just say, we're going to waive all the laws. They can't do that. So there are lots of strings attached to that funding. And if you've ever applied for federal funding or received federal funding, you've been exposed to some of those strings. But some of them are really constraining. Some of them are really unclear. And we're still kind of trying to figure out what it means. And some of them, that lack of clarity is kind of stopping some of the coalitions from moving forward. Right? The prime recipients are kind of, we're ready to move on to the next stage because they're getting their coalition members like knocking at the door saying, what's happening? When is my funding coming down the pike? And they have to tell them again, let's take 4 steps back because there's a bunch of stuff here that we don't know and don't understand, some very basic things about the structure of the program. So one of the kind of the dumb examples that we're all collectively working through right now, but that's just a reality, is how the funding actually goes out, the shape that the funding takes when it goes out. And I don't mean by that, is it going to be a grant or a loan or a revolving fund or an IRBD or a loan loss reserve? I don't mean that.
Because it could be any of those things.
Because it could be any of those things. What I mean by that is, am I going to need a federal procurement every single time I do anything with a for-profit company, right? That we don't actually understand that yet. And we're getting some kind of mixed signals from agencies. So that seems like a really kind of, again, dumb thing to be focused on, but what stops programs from being successful is the lack of people, both on the contractor side, on the developer side, and the lack of customers. If you can't explain to your contractor why they should join your program and why your program is awesome, they have other things that they can do. Solar is growing like crazy at the moment. Mm-hmm. They have customers that are really easy to serve elsewhere. Why would they bother coming with you, right? So for those programs to be successful, you as a state or as a nonprofit or as a tribe, as part of these programs, you need to be able to make a case that is, it's worth doing, right? And if you can't explain your basic business case to them, then you are likely going to fail. So that's what keeps me up at night. It's the we're going to design awesome things that are going to be so complicated that no one's going to want to sign up, right? So I think that's where we all need to really work towards simplicity, as simple as possible, as replicable as possible, and as fast as possible. And on the other side of the people are the consumers. And I think there's also a tremendous risk of harm on consumers, because not all solar developers out there are super, how do I put this politely?
Are super, period.
They're not all super. There you go. They're not all super. There's actually an article I really recommend. If you just Google Solar Bros, and you will get some really interesting reporting out there on what's happening. We have in our, some of the awardees that we're working with, that I went to RE Plus about a month ago. I was with an awardee, and they were like, you see that guy over there? Yeah, they're saying they're part of the Solar Fall coalition of fill in the blank. That was that person. We've never met them. There are people out there already kind of trying to sell this thing that doesn't yet exist, right? So that also keeps me up at night. And I think there's lots of work that needs to be done on consumer protection and making sure that those very, very vulnerable communities that we're trying to reach don't get fleeced. And that's, it's, again, a short time to do all of this while making it simple enough that people want to join.
Okay, now is the time when I want our microphone runners to get in position, and I'm happy to take a first question that actually just came up. I'll do one from the audience, and then I'll ask one. Is that okay? Okay, so Heather, yeah, it'll turn on when you hand it to him, I think.
Thank you for the presentation.
Actually, it's not on.
I don't know if it's on, but we can hear you. There you
Now
go.
it's on.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. You guys are doing great work. My question is, particularly in Connecticut, over the summer, a lot of residents were complaining about electricity price hikes. And one of the reasons that was noted was it was a standard, what they call the standard service charge, and part of that charge was for renewable and carbon-free electricity. So that almost seems kind of, I guess, backwards, where there's so much, all this funding, millions of dollars being made available, and particularly for lower income residents, yet the lower income residents are complaining about electricity price hikes because they're being charged for renewable energy, which they may or may not be receiving.
Yeah, so that also, I think, builds on this. Are we ensuring that these programs are actually delivering? How do you ensure that the delivery of these programs deliver what they say they will, and how do you not get caught up in people's current energy burden, the prices that they're paying, et cetera? How are you navigating that landscape? Great question.
So on the, I don't know about the situation in Connecticut that you're referring to, but in terms of solar savings, when you're looking at it, if you're looking at it from the outside, broadly speaking, you'll think, okay, you're saving, you're asking people to provide, you're asking awardees, excuse me, to provide 20% off of a certain baseline, right? And that's going to be over the timeline of your assets. So these savings are net savings, right? They're whole bill savings. So that's actually a higher standard than the standard that's normally being applied in the industry. Not that that other programs don't have a percentage saving, but it's actually fairly rare. We did a survey of essentially all of the low-income solar programs that are currently running in the country, and there were only I think 4 or 5 that actually had a savings requirement of any kind. It doesn't mean that savings are not being achieved, but it does mean that it's kind of a complicated topic, and when you get to the bottom of it, all of those situations are they're very individual, is what I mean to say. When you're looking at a rooftop kind of installation, you can't really fully, and I mean by that third-party ownership or direct ownership by the homeowner. You can't really guarantee that there's going to be a saving in the long term. And that is because the utility prices are outside of your control, the consumer consumption is outside of your control, what the Public Utility Commission is going to do is outside of your control. So there's lots and lots and lots of reasons why that might be the case. Production is something that can be guaranteed, production of the system. So the savings piece can be guaranteed. Although there's one company that does, well, okay, I won't get into that. But savings usually can be fully guaranteed, but the production itself, the performance of the system, that's something that we can verify, that we can monitor. In addition to that, as a program administrator, it's kind of your role to be able to say, okay, I'm going to look at the structure of this contract and see, do the escalators make sense? Are the escalators related in any way to your utility pricing? If they are not, what does that mean when the utility price goes down? If it does, which it doesn't often, but it's possible, right? And also, do I have a saving that is high enough that if I have a little bit of variation due to seasonality, I'm still going to see a saving and not actually end up paying more, which for low-income households would be really bad. So that's on the rooftop side. If you're looking at other systems like community solar, the way that savings are usually evaluated is through something called bill credit discount rates. And what that applies to is not the entire bill. It applies to the production from your system, which is generally just the energy supply piece of that, right? So transmission is probably outside of that. And your fixed charges that you're talking about are also outside of that. So when a developer is telling you, a community solar subscription manager telling you, I'm going to give you a 20% bill credit discount rate or 20% saving, they're not actually talking about the whole bill saving. They're actually just talking about a percentage that is fixed below, so credit that's given to you based on the production of the system. So they're selling to you this electricity you're buying at a discount. So you are saving money, but you're not saving 20% of your whole bill. So it's, again, very difficult to quantify. And to verify it, honestly, there's production is the way to go, and some spot checks to make sure that you're not ending up with situations where something completely nuts happened that you had not predicted, and your system is like completely out of whack. Sorry, that was a really long explanation.
No, but I want to build on this. Also embedded in the question is the communication of why did your bill go up? But I want to take us up, 10,000 foot and talk about communication about the GGRF program. Are you seeing, what are your conversations like in North and South Dakota that this is new territory?
So to connect to your question about utility, and I always try to bring it back to everyone in the audience and why everyone needs to be in this industry right now. And one, we're hiring. I was forced to be on the stage and to tell you all that we are hiring. We are hiring. We are hiring. But all jokes aside, the average person does not understand their utility bill.
At all.
Period.
I don't.
Right? That's why you're asking about this. This program is going to force, at least at the state level, I think some of the state agencies are going to be like, wait, I actually don't understand how the utility system works in my state. And when I say system, it's systems, right? Because there's investor-owned utilities, there's rural electric cooperatives, there's municipal utilities. They all function and operate differently. Some are regulated, some are deregulated. Everything Vero is saying, I'm learning on the job because I'm helping to design a Solar for All program. But again, the average person doesn't look at their utility bill and it's like, let me look at every line item. Wait, do I know who my public service commissioner is? Do I know that they're elected? Do I know that I have a voice? Do they know that I have agency? So your question about communication, we are struggling with communication. But once these programs are in implementation mode, I hope that it gives the average person, and even including ourselves, some agency, because we are consumers, but we so easily flip on the light switch and get energy that we take it for granted. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know what the true cost is. The question is whether or not we even pay the true cost of energy. That was discussed in a panel earlier today. So I'm hoping that while we are lacking communication now, these programs help spur kitchen table conversations about the things that are most important to our livelihoods, which is energy.
So I do want to note that Charles Hua's talk before lunch actually invited all the participants there to actually go look up who their Public Service Commission members
Thank
are.
you.
So people already have homework. I feel right at home deciding. But, so Rishika, what about you and the communication challenges that you face in Philly and on these programs, and what are you struggling with, if anything, in that space?
It's hard. It's hard to get people to think about energy when energy is not really top of mind, especially for a lot of low-income households. They're literally struggling to keep the lights on, yes, but they're also thinking about, can I get my medicine for my mom on time? Do I need to skip around this time or cut them in half? Can I keep the lights on? Can I take my kids to school? Can I buy them lunch? There's way more complicated concerns in life than figuring out what is happening on your roof and if your electricity bill is too high or too low every other month. I think a large portion of having conversations about energy is actually not talking about energy. It's talking about the other aspects of what it means. So when you're thinking about the concept of energy burden, which is, how much of your utilities or how much of your take-home pay and income are you spending on utilities? When that percentage is higher than, say, 10%, a household is incredibly burdened. But they're probably also, facing a lot of other challenges with paying their bills. So if we take it back down to, okay, by thinking about solar and bringing down your overall utilities cost over time, you're freeing up mental energy as well as physical money to be able to spend on something else. Thinking about job creation as you are going to be able to, by participating in this workforce development program that's coming out of all this programmatic work that we're launching and we're able to support, you are going to get to work in your neighborhood supporting, solar jobs, working with your neighbors and talking more about why the work that you're doing is cool, but then also being able to, work in your community, not have to go somewhere else for work and have a really well-paying, good job. Thinking about the framework in a different way for us has been really impactful, but it's hard. Like, I don't think like this. And I have had to learn so much about being able to talk to like this. And that's why, a lot of our community engagement partners, we have a bunch of community legal services and a bunch of partners on the ground who talk about this every day, and helping them as trusted partners on the ground communicate this language has been so helpful. And again, work in progress for all of us, but highly recommend making sure that you're talking in terms and language and a perspective that actually is relatable, which is hard.
And you have that muscle memory in that you and the Philadelphia Energy Authority and others have been doing, this isn't your first time doing this.
Nope, this is not our first rodeo.
Yep.
So that helps.
Can I add something to this real quick, just so that people understand the scale of the issue we're looking at here? A quarter of American households cannot afford to pay their utility bills. Yeah. That's a huge number, right? It's a huge number. And if you start adding to that any kind of low income or racial components, you're going into the 30s to high 30 percentage points, right? That's what the scale of the problem is, but it's also the scale of the opportunity in terms of this program and how you're actually making an impact.
Mm-hmm. So Vero, I want to build on that, and then I want our next hand up and our microphone to that person so they can go right after me. So if you have hands up, put them up and our runners will find you. We had Adrian Devaney join us in our Financing Deploying Clean Energy to tell us how the sausage was made on the Inflation Reduction Act. Mm-hmm. And one thing he said that freaked me out a little bit was that we need to do this 3 more times. That this $27 billion is terrific, but it's definitely not enough. How do you all see that next, the scale of the problem? 27 billion is, with a B, which is hard to say, is still a drop in the bucket in the scale. So what do we need to do to make that the next one of these happen or the additional funds happen?
I'm going to just hot take is we need an administration that will invest in clean energy. It is. I was at a Women in Clean Energy Investing and Finance. They're a fantastic group. They meet in New York City, Washington, D.C., in California, I think in Los Angeles. And we had a smaller, intimate panel talking about this, but this was all women who are in the industry. And I asked this question to a woman who works in utilities. So she said, the utilities will continue to make the transition, but there's no guarantee that everyone will be included. And that is the biggest concern, and that impacts low-income communities and the general consumers outside of industrial users, is that if we are at the end of the transmission line, we are going to be paying for the transition. And the question is whether or not that's something we're all willing to foot the bill for. And so if we need more money, we need an administration that will continue to invest and make sure that the markets feel comfortable to continue to invest alongside us. And that's what Rishika was saying is, the capital markets still deem the communities that the average working professional lives in as too risky. Even some of our neighborhoods and communities have really low credit scores and are not creditworthy to even borrow the money to make their investments for the municipality. So we need to continue to have federal support to ensure that this happens in a way that rises all tides and makes sure that we are not all fitting the bill because industry is leaving us behind.
I think the only thing I would personally add to that is yes, 100% yes. The equity first lens is really the most challenging part of this work and probably the biggest barrier to making this more mainstream and more streamlined. I think another focus that would be really impactful is thinking about how to get like participants on the workforce development side also better engaged. So having either policy or incentives or better engagement from like installers, contractors, to think about how they can actually build out a green energy economy in the communities that they exist in is also incredibly valuable. And if beyond, getting investment in doing that work, a change in that lens would make a massive difference in terms of who benefits from all the work that's being done through Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, other aspects of the Inflation Reduction Act, and just broader investment in clean energy.
And what I think I'm hearing in some of that you have the workforce development world investing here, which will be a multiplier. You have the housing world investing here. You have the transportation world investing here. So leveraging other people's money as well is always a good thing to do.
We love a good leverage ratio.
Add to that.
You can add, but I want a hand somewhere in the audience as well. Oh, we got, okay.
So I'd add to that, and I'm a bit of a broken record about that, because I think, so GGRF is large, LPO is large, the by far...
Loan Programs Office.
Excuse me, Loan Programs Office is large. By far the largest piece of the IRA in terms of clean energy investment is the tax credits.
Yes.
The tax credits are great. We like tax credits because that's what we have. But if you've at any time sat in a Yale lecture, you've probably heard people go on and on about how, they're not really efficient, but it's true, right? They're not efficient, they're complicated. Like we could do this much in a much simpler way, but that's just the tool that we have. That being the case, the IRA opened, does everybody know what elective pay or direct pay is? Or rather, does anyone not know what direct pay is? Raise your hand if you don't know. Okay, so real quick, direct pay is a way that was opened by the IRA, a way to monetize a tax credit that was opened by the IRA that allows non-taxable entities to take advantage of the tax credits, right? So the basic premise of the tax credits is if you have a tax basis, if you're going to owe taxes, you're able to use those tax credits to reduce that. The IRA made it so that we could, if you're a nonprofit, if you are a tribe, if you are a government, you're now able, or municipality, you're now able to say, I'm going to go and own my own solar plus storage, wind, whatever that might be, and I'm going to be able to use those tax credits. I'm going to get a direct check from the government, a payment from the government, right? Which is a lot simpler than having to deal with tax equity partners and all that. So all of the awardees right now are grappling with how are we going to use this, how are we going to enable this with our GGRF funding. And a lot of kind of what awardees are trying to do is figure out how we stretch the GGRF dollars moving forward. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area because of something called the excessive benefits rule. We can't just fund the entirety of an asset. You have to fund all the way up to the price or the cost of your, not the cost, it's the basis of your asset minus the value of your ITC, which could be like 30, 50 to potentially 70% if you live in unicorn land and that actually happens, which I've never seen, but I don't know, it might exist out there. So you can't actually fully fund that and expect to get that funding back. You're going to have to, if you wanted to have a free project with, let's say, 30% ITC funded by the federal government through direct pay, you have to offer some sort of a bridge loan. If you offered the entire thing as, let's say, a loan that you can recover, the IRS would say, well, no, I'm actually not giving you 30%. You've already got the whole value covered, right? So we're all trying to kind of grapple through that, figure out what can be done with that. All 60 awardees on the SolarVol side, and all probably 3 awardees on the NCIF side, and all 5 of the CCIA guys, right? And every single other group in the country that's working on this. There's lots and lots and lots of work happening on that front. That's just one example. I think the next version of the IRA, the kind of the next stage, I would really love for this to be open in kind of a bit of a broader way, right? So right now they've decided that if you're a nonprofit, a tribe, or a government, you still have to jump through massive hoops to be able to use that funding. Well, what about your low-income households? All of this would be a lot simpler if maybe you could just get a check from the government instead of having to do a tax credit. And if we need to call it direct pay, let's call it direct pay. I really don't care particularly, but it seems like something that is the next stage in our thinking about how to subsidize this industry for the areas that are still hard to reach, right? I don't think solar on like large commercial stuff still needs to be subsidized necessarily. I'm going to get shot by the solar industry for saying that. But for the really hard stuff, for the solar plus storage on multifamily affordable housing, yes, absolutely. Why not?
We had a question over here in the corner.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks so much for coming here today. This has been really informative and insightful. My question is for you, Rishika, specifically about your work with the Green Capital Corp in Philadelphia. Have you encountered any sort of tensions with labor unions when it comes to achieving some of these energy transition objectives? I know Pennsylvania is a big swing state, and a lot of the battlegrounds over our energy future are being waged there. So I'd love to hear from you on that.
That is a lovely question. I will say the way I'm going to put it in perspective is entirely on my focus in Southeast Pennsylvania. So I don't have nearly as much perspective on the rest of the state, so I will refrain from commenting. But in terms of the work in Southeast Pennsylvania, I would say we have some really great engagement from a lot of the unions that are there. Even when we were putting forward our Solar for All application, and even now as we're thinking about implementation, there's been such close engagement with the Steelworkers Union, the Carpenters Union, and a few of these other major players that are really going to be impactful for us having a good, strong workforce, especially as we're thinking about things like ensuring that folks who are working on implementation are getting prevailing wage, thinking about things like apprenticeship. There's a lot of really, there's a major alignment between what unions want and what we're trying to achieve with this funding. And there's such a great overlap. And so far, I'm not going to jinx us, so far there's been amazing communication, and we're really looking forward to engaging with the unions, working with our installer partners and contracting partners on doing this work, and continuing to work together on implementation. Again, I'm not speaking for the rest of the state. I do not know what's happening outside of Southeast Pennsylvania. But for us, things are looking great.
And I can speak nationally. We've had great conversations with AFL-CIO. We actually have on the Coalition for Green Capital, one of their senior level staff is on our board. The Blue-Green Alliance, which is a fantastic membership organization trying to bring together multiple unions. Yes, to Rishika's point, is our objectives are aligned. We also have a letter of support from NAB2, which is the National Association of Building Trades. I'm missing a letter there, but there's huge interest. We also have a requirement to meet what is called Davis-Bacon laws, is providing prevailing wage for any investments that we're making across all of the funding with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So this is truly an industrial policy that is leading with labor forward and equity-centered efforts in a way. I don't have to talk about industrial policies to this audience. I feel like we're all very familiar with the U.S. doing a really poor job in the past. And so I think that's also something that's forward-thinking, of being excited about what this looks like if it's truly implemented in the way that it's intended.
Mm-hmm. So I want to, it seems like, Nenha, you should have moderated, because I keep stealing all the things that you've said all afternoon. And I want to ask one, which I'm thrilled that you're hiring, and I want to encourage everyone on this panel then to talk about, and two of you have been through this program here at Yale, you've been through MBA programs. If you are in this audience, if you're a student, if you are thinking about or in our certificate programs, what are the skills that they should be grabbing? What classes should they take? Is there like something that you took that you're now using every day, and it could be, something you learned in kindergarten? I mean, we don't have to go all the way back there about sharing and playing nice, but what is it that they in the audience should be doing to make sure that they're ready to work for organizations like yours? And
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I was going to say enthusiasm is a really good starting point. Having genuine interest in working here and doing your research about, honestly, understanding the acronyms is like step one. I highly recommend like podcasts and getting a little bit more into just like learning the language, understanding a bit more about the policy landscape and what like companies and organizations right now have in mind. Something that I'm actually really excited by is how much the clean energy industry, and especially Green Bank land, is currently hiring. We're looking for a lot of talent that comes from like specialties in other like parts of industry. Like you could be, you know, a lawyer, and really come and really help me understand a lot of things on the legal side with clean energy work. Or, you know, you could be a specialist in like finance and come in and support and build out, you know, financing programs, think through underwriting, loan applications, project development, things like that. There's a lot of really important transferable skills that you might already have. It's just applying it to the clean energy industry is probably a lot more straightforward than you think. And again, we're also hiring. We were an organization of like 2 at the beginning of the year, and now I think we're at 7 as of yesterday. So getting that out there. These are growing. If you have interest and some level of excitement and can semi-speak the language, I think you're doing really well in order to transition into the clean energy world.
Vero, your thoughts, and particularly with the folks that you work with, who are they looking for ideally?
So, I mean, these are two different things. I think there's the general kind of skills that I think anybody who works in clean energy should have, and then there's what people are looking for right now, right? So I'll start with what people are looking for right now. Because we're still in this compliance-heavy phase, there are lots of folks looking for people who can do compliance, people who can look into really, really long, boring documents and translate them. That's the skill, honestly, right? That's the skill. Do you have the patience to read through this really excruciatingly boring thing and then pull the marrow out of it? So that's what people are looking for right now. But that's going to change moving forward as we get kind of a little further along in the deployment. On the NCIF front, I will also say there's a lot of recruiting happening kind of on a more strategic level, kind of people who already know a little bit about the industry and are able to pull from different parts of this sector. But what I personally think anyone should know about is a little tiny bit of finance. You don't have to be an expert, but you do need to know a little tiny bit of finance because it is so fundamental to how clean energy gets put out in the world, right? It's really the main difference between and the main barrier between the stuff we used to do in fossil fuel and the stuff we're currently doing with renewables is that we need upfront capital for it.